All right, I am very excited about this. Everybody, welcome officially to episode one of the Mount Rushmore of everything. Quick introduction. My name is Chris Diorio. In addition to being a stand-up comedian, I am a man who's done and seen a lot, if not everything, but at least enough where I feel confident that I feel comfortable giving you my opinion on just about everything. So I decided to embark on a journey to create a Mount Rushmore for just about everything. So before we get started, let's get some ground rules out of the way. How does this all work, right? What is this going on? Well, as I gather these lists, each episode will follow the classic Mount Rushmore format. So whatever it is I'm ranking, I will take the four greatest examples of that thing and stick it on this mountain behind me. And because I'm a bit of a people pleaser, each episode also will have an honorable mention. And of course, the most important thing for me to honorably mention is that at the end of the day, these are my opinions and my opinions alone. So, although I do try to provide some kind of rationale behind all my decisions, you are allowed and encouraged to disagree with me in the comments. Or, if you agree with me, you're more than welcome to tell me how right I am. Even though I already know, it kind of feels good to hear it every once in a while, you know? So, without further ado, let's go ahead and all climb this mountain, folks. Episode one of the Mount Rushmore of everything is the Mount Rushmore of Halloween horror villains. I figured since we are smack dab in the middle of spooky season, at the time of writing this, I couldn't think of a better way to start, and this is a great example of how the format will work. These Halloween horror villains are the ones who have haunted our dreams, stemming from their appearances on screen. These are mostly from the slasher film genre, and these aren't your classic monsters from literature, right? More so the villains of the modern day. So if you're looking for the more classic monsters from the early days, like vampires and stuff like that, well, spoiler alert, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to see that video when it comes out. So without further ado, we have our honorable mention, almost climbing the mountain, but just not quite making it, is Chucky. Chucky is this dangerous little toy that first appeared in the 1988 movie Child's Play. Chucky scared the poop out of a whole generation of us as he preyed on our fears of our toys coming to life and possibly murdering us. But unlike a lot of the other haunted doll stories, like Annabelle and those ones, Chucky wasn't the ghost of like a sick Victorian child. He was embodied by the spirit of a serial killer. And counting reboots, I believe Chucky murdered his way through eight different movies. And he brought the kind of violence previously only seen by mothers yelling at their children for forgetting to pull the chicken out of the freezer to thaw out for dinner. So, although he's a personal favorite of mine, Chucky just misses being on the mountain. If I wasn't being objective and I was basing this purely on personal opinion, I would have him there because I love the guy. He's hilarious. Because I like a little comic relief in my horror movies. But sticking to the classic slasher genre just doesn't quite make it. And then there was that one movie where you had Papa Chucky and Mama Chucky, and they had little baby Chucky, and that little baby Chucky kind of ended up looking like Pete Buttigieg, which in a way is actually kind of scarier than most of the villains on this list. But just because of that, we have to just put Chucky out of the reach of the Mount Rushmore of everything. So, with that out of the way, the first Halloween horror villain making it officially on the mountain is, drum roll please in your own head because I'm not doing a drum roll, Michael Myers. In my opinion, you cannot possibly have a list of the greatest horror movie villains, the Halloween horror movie villains, without having the horror villain from the movie Halloween, Michael Myers. Michael Myers came to us in the first Halloween film, which was released in 1978. Counting reboots, we've had 13 Halloween films, which of course is an awesome number for a horror franchise. And Michael Myers was, to me, extra cool because he started off as an air quotes normal human being, just a regular kid who played rough with his siblings and eventually got committed to an insane asylum. What makes him scary is that in a way, we can all see a little bit of ourselves in Michael Myers. He was a kid with a rough childhood that loves to dress up on Halloween and has an adorable, guttural hatred of Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm practically the same guy. And over the years, Michael Myers' character kind of did a little Texas two-step in and out of being just a giant psychopath with a hard-on for murder to kind of being a borderline supernatural creature capable of teleportation, superhuman strength, and making William Shatner's face look even more terrifying than normal. But to me, whether he's a ghost or a guy, Michael Myers definitely deserves his place on the Mount Rushmore of Halloween horror villains. And next up, it would not be a mountain without this maniac, the one, the only, Freddy Krueger. So Freddy first appeared in the movies and our nightmares in the first ever Nightmare on Elm Street movie, which was released in 1984. What made Freddy particularly terrifying, besides the most infamous glove in the world since O.J. Simpson, is the fact that Freddy would attack you in your dreams. He turned sleep, the most wonderful and majestic thing in the world, into the most dangerous place for a kid to be, outside of maybe being trapped in a mansion with a bunch of investment bankers and Hollywood actors. Freddy is unique on this list because he is both terrifying and entertaining. Like Michael Myers remains silent while he attempts to track you down and turn you inside out. Freddy Krueger openly mocks and threatens you as he makes it known that he will kill you. He kind of looks like Edward Scissorhands if he'd spent time in Chernobyl, but Freddy is the master of the dream world, and what really sets him aside, kind of like some of the others, is his look. The glove, the hat, the sweater, the penchant for murder. Man, this guy actually really is kind of OJ, isn't he? Freddy remains an icon and is many people's choice for the greatest of all time. And for those who do pick him as the greatest of all time, can argue with you. Either way, 100% Freddy Krueger belongs on this Mount Rushmore of everything. The third monster appearing on this list, and I certainly will not mask it from you anymore, is of course Jason Voorhees, or most simply often known as Jason. So Jason first appeared in the first ever Friday the 13th movie released in 1980. What's interesting about Jason is he actually wasn't the villain in his own first movie. The villain in the first movie, the killer, was Jason's mother. So after a bunch of weed smoking hippies allowed him to drown and also started the ball rolling on later crashing the housing market for the rest of us, baby boomers, Jason's mother, pretty justifiably in my opinion, began murdering all these counselors at Camp Crystal Lake. So over the course of the next several movies, Jason continues murdering camp counselors, greatly reducing the number of available Starbucks baristas for the next several years. Later on in the series, we learn more about Jason and his character that adds to his story, which is really to me what makes him so great. He's a demon, he's a space monster, a horror villain, a man, a child, all the above. Several times we believe that someone has found the one thing that will rid the world of Jason once and for all, but no matter what, he keeps coming back, which is what defines his character and makes him an absolute icon. Now, although he wasn't the first slasher movie villain, many people, myself included, consider him the best. Now, before we get to the last entry in the list and the comments section turns into a mosh pit of people rolling their faces across the keyboard trying to threaten me, this Mount Rushmore, again, is only focusing on what I consider slasher type Halloween horror villains, right? So I do, again, another spoiler, have a completely separate list for the more human horror villains. So if you're thinking, hey, where's Norman Bates? Where's Hannibal Lecter? Some of these guys. Well, again, like, share, and subscribe, and look forward to that next list because, spoiler alert, things like that are coming. This one is focusing on those monsters that we know from slasher films. So with that being said, the final member of the Mount Rushmore of Halloween horror villains is Leatherface. So also known as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre by some, that is technically the name of the movie franchise and not necessarily the murderer himself. Leatherface is the original slasher villain. He's the only one of these slasher villains that can really be considered an original in a lot of different ways. Because the first of his nine movies came out in 1974, so he predates all these other characters by a few years. He's got a face that only a mother who is also a cannibal could love. Leatherface is the template for horror slasher villains, right? Leatherface is a mentally challenged, deranged cannibal, which makes him right at home in a slasher movie or on the buffet line at a Cannibal Cruise carnival ship. He's the inspiration for many horror icons we have today. He was the first one to ever wear a mask, which inspired both Jason and Michael Myers. He was sadistically violent, which inspired Chucky and Freddy. And when he took his mask off, he was horribly disfigured Southern man who turned out to be a puppet for a much more evil group of people, making him a perfect inspiration for Senator Lindsey Graham. With a terrifying chainsaw in one hand and being stronger than Joe Biden's grip on an ice cream cone, Leatherface truly is the foundation of the Mount Rushmore of horror villains. Like what you see here? Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and tune into the next episode of the Mount Rushmore of Everything. As always, I'm your host, comedian Chris Diorio. We will see you on the next episode of the Mount Rushmore of Everything.